Dinosaurs are considered by many people to be some of the most amazing creatures to have ever lived. These gigantic beasts with thick scales and terrifying teeth are known for their sheer size and dominance. But despite the fact that they were so massive and powerful, they didn't appear out of nowhere. In fact, there was an entire world that existed before the dinosaur era. A world in which life was just as vibrant and beautiful, but looked very different from what we know today. So let's go back even further to the world before dinosaurs, where bizarre amphibians and early reptiles ruled the land. The Paleozoic era, 300 million years ago. The Paleozoic era was a time of great change on Earth, a time when the first forests appeared and animals began to crawl out of the oceans and onto the land. This era lasted from around 541 to 252 million years ago and is divided into 6 different periods. The first of these is the Oleonezoic, which saw the emergence of the first vertebrates, creatures like hagfish and lamprey. Then came the Silurian, which saw the emergence of the first jawed fish. It was also during this period that the first tetrapods, or 4-footed vertebrates, made their appearance on land. Next came the Devonian, often referred to as the Age of Fishes due to the incredible diversity of fish species that lived during this time. The Devonian also saw the first forests of vascular plants, as well as the evolution of the first insects, and the earliest known terrestrial arthropods. After that came the Carboniferous, a period named for the vast coal swamps that formed from the dense forests of ferns and other plants. During this time, the first reptiles evolved and the first amphibians appeared. The next 2 periods, the Permian and the Triassic, would see the rise of the first dinosaurs. But more on that later. Amphibians ruled the land. As the Paleozoic era drew to a close, amphibians were at the top of the food chain. They had no natural enemies on land and were able to thrive in a variety of habitats. Their moist skin allowed them to absorb water and breathe, making them perfectly adapted for life in the early stages of our planet's history. There were many different types of amphibians, but one of the most remarkable was the Pre-Dinosaur. This creature was truly a giant among amphibians, growing up to 6 feet long and weighing over 500 pounds. It had a long, slender body with a narrow head and a pair of large eyes on top of its head. Pre-Dinosaurus walked on all 4s and used its long, powerful legs to leap great distances. Its diet consisted mainly of fish and other aquatic animals, which it caught by wading into shallow waters and using its long, sticky tongue to snatch them up. The Pre-Dinosaur was an apex predator, feared by all who encountered it. Its size and strength made it virtually unstoppable. Its ability to move both on land and in water gave it a huge advantage over its prey. Another type of amphibian that thrived during this time was the temnospondyle. This group of animals was incredibly diverse, with hundreds of different species living across the globe. Temnospondyls came in all shapes and sizes, but they all shared a common set of features. They had short, sturdy limbs that were adapted for walking on land, as well as a large skull with powerful jaws. Some temnospondyls were small, no bigger than a frog, while others were huge, growing up to 20 feet long. One of the most famous temnospondyls was the Erythrops. This creature was a true giant, with a massive head and a body that resembled a crocodile. Erythrops was a carnivore, and it used its powerful jaws to snap up just about anything that got too close. It was also perfectly adapted for life in the water, with its long, slender tail propelling it through the water with ease. Erythrops was such a fearsome predator that it was at the top of the food chain. There was nothing in the ecosystem that was safe from its snapping jaws. Insects take flight. While amphibians were dominating the land, another group of animals was just beginning to make their presence felt: the insects. Insects are the most diverse group of animals on Earth today, with over 1 million different species living in almost every habitat imaginable, but their origins are shrouded in mystery. The earliest known insects appeared during the Devonian period, and they were unlike any insects we see today. They had 3 pairs of legs, like modern insects, but they also had 2 pairs of wings, which is unusual for insects. These early insects were probably small, soft-bodied creatures that lived in the shade of the giant trees that dominated the landscape. But as the Carboniferous period began, insects began to diversify and grow in size. By the end of the Carboniferous, there were insects of all shapes and sizes, from tiny beetles to huge dragonflies, with wingspans of up to 3 feet. Dragonflies were the undisputed masters of the skies during this time, They were fast, agile predators that used their huge wings to zoom through the air with ease. They had large, compound eyes that could see in all directions, and their long, slender bodies were perfect for catching prey. Dragonflies were voracious hunters, and they fed mainly on other insects, which they caught in midair and devoured on the spot. With their huge size and powerful jaws, dragonflies were at the top of the food chain in the insect world. Early reptiles emerge. As the Paleozoic era drew to a close, a new group of animals was just beginning to appear on land: the reptiles. Reptiles are cold-blooded vertebrates that are characterized by their scaly skin and their ability to lay eggs on land. The earliest reptiles were small, lizard-like creatures that lived in the shadow of the giants. Amphibians were still the dominant land animals, but the reptiles were about to make their mark on the world. One of the first major groups of reptiles were the Dinosaurs. These were small, agile creatures that lived in the lowlands. They had long, slender bodies and 4 short legs, and they were perfectly adapted for life in the undergrowth. Racers were primarily insectivores, and they used their sharp teeth and powerful jaws to snap up any insects that got too close. They were also excellent swimmers and spent a lot of time in the water, where they were equally adept at catching fish and other aquatic animals. The erasers were small, but they were also very successful. They were able to thrive in a variety of habitats, and they were perfectly adapted for life in the Paleozoic world. As the era came to an end, the Dinosaurs would give rise to some of the most famous reptiles of all time, the dinosaurs. But that would have to wait until the next era, the Mesozoic. The age of the dinosaurs, the Mesozoic era, is often referred to as the age of reptiles, and for good reason. It was during this time that dinosaurs became the dominant land animals, and that reptiles of all kinds flourished. The era lasted from around 252 to 66 million years ago, and is divided into 3 periods: the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. The Triassic was a time of great upheaval, as the great mass extinction that marked the end of the Paleozoic had wiped out a staggering 90% of all marine species and 70% of all terrestrial species. But life on Earth is remarkably resilient, and new life quickly filled the void left by the creatures that had been lost. The Triassic was also a time of great change on the land. The first dinosaurs appeared during this period and quickly began to dominate the landscape. Dinosaurs are a diverse group of reptiles that are characterized by their upright posture and their long, powerful tails. The word dinosaur means terrible lizard, and these creatures certainly lived up to their name. There were all shapes and sizes of dinosaurs, from the massive sauropods like Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus to the fearsome carnivores like Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus. But while dinosaurs were the stars of the show during the Jurassic period, it was the marine reptiles that were the most impressive. This period saw the rise of the ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, and mosasaurs, all of which were perfectly adapted for life in the water. Ichthyosaurs were dolphin-like creatures that were perfectly adapted for a life in the ocean. They had streamlined bodies, powerful tails, and large dorsal fins that made them incredibly maneuverable in the water. Plesiosaurs, on the other hand, were huge, long-necked creatures that were perfectly adapted for deep diving. They could reach lengths of over 30 feet, and their long necks allowed them to reach prey that was far below the surface. Mosasaurs were giant, whale-like creatures that were the ultimate predators of the seas. They had enormous teeth and powerful jaws that were capable of crushing bone. Finally, we come to the Cretaceous period. The Cretaceous was a time of great diversity. Flowering plants began to appear, and dinosaurs reached their greatest size and diversity. The period was also marked by the death of the dinosaurs, which was caused by a massive asteroid impact. The impact caused widespread devastation and led to the extinction of an estimated 75% of all species. Among the creatures that perished in the cataclysm were the dinosaurs, whose reign over the Earth had come to an end after 180 million years. But the story doesn't end here. In fact, it's just beginning. For the Cretaceous-Pelagian extinction event also marked the beginning of the Cenozoic era, which ushered in the age of mammals. From small proto-wombats to giant saber-toothed cats, the Mesozoic was a time of great change, and mammals seized the opportunity to become the dominant land animals. And so the world turned upside down. Amphibians and reptiles were replaced by dinosaurs and eventually mammals. The age of the dinosaurs came to an end, but their legacy lives on. We can explore the world before dinosaurs by visiting places like Ghost Ranch, New Mexico, where ancient fossils have been found, or by watching documentaries about the amazing creatures that lived during the Paleozoic and Mesozoic eras. We can learn about the strange and wonderful animals that roamed the earth before dinosaurs and marvel at the changes that have occurred over the course of our planet's history. The world before dinosaurs may be long gone, but it's not forgotten. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think and what you'd like to see next. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all of our latest content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.